what is difference between SSL offloading, SSL pass through, and SSL bridging. So if I talk about SSL offloading, we have a client, we have F5, and we have server. Let's say I am taking one server. So SSL offloading generally means that your client to F5 session is encrypted. So it gets encrypted using your SSL profile, which is called client SSL. But your F5 to the server session is unencrypted, which means it is plain text and it's not using any profile. So that is what is called SSL offloading. So I hope everyone is clear like how to answer this question. Now another term which my colleague has asked, what is SSL bridging? What is the concept of SSL bridging in F5? So SSL bridging, if I talk about SSL bridging, we are taking the same picture, which is client and F5, then we take server. So in this, both your client to F5 is encrypted and F5 to the server is also encrypted. So the difference between SSL offloading versus SSL bridging is in SSL offloading, your client to F5 is encrypted, but F5 to the server is unencrypted. But here, your end-to-end session is encrypted. I hope this is clear. Let me show you also, like I will also show you like how we can apply. So we use here client SSL profile, and here we are using server SSL profile.
So, which means first the traffic which is coming from client to F5, it is encrypted down. Now F5 receive this traffic, he will decrypt it, and after it, he will again re-encrypt the traffic by using the SSL server certificate or server keys, and it will send that data towards the server, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is how it works. Now another term which is remaining is what is SSL pass through. This is very important term. Generally, people know about SSL offloading and SSL bridging, but another term which comes in picture is SSL pass through. So I'm just drawing another picture, which is client. I have F5 and I have server. In this case, guys, what it will do is your end-to-end session. This one is encrypted, and this is also encrypted. But here customer wants to encrypt end to end, right? When I say end to end, client to F5 and F5 to the server, but it will not use any client SSL or server SSL profile. It means everything will be offloading on the server, but customer wants it to be passed through. Pass through means your client to F5 would be encrypted, F5 to the server would be encrypted, but your F5 will not decrypt or encrypt. It will just pass the traffic which it receives. Let's say it receives 443 traffic on F5, then it will be transferred to server directly. Decryption or encryption would not be done on F5.
In that case, how F5 will scan that traffic for threats, and if there is any kind of malwares inside that particular traffic, how it will basically protect in that
So
case?
that is very good question. So in SSL pass through, there is no way to open your HTTP traffic. So in that case, SSL pass through, we cannot use HTTP profile. So if F5 does not have HTTP profile attached, it cannot open the packet. In this case, it will just load balance traffic based on TCP layer.
Which means we will not it will not able to inspect that traffic for threats and other things, right?
Right, it will just, it receives the traffic and it will just forward it
Okay, got it.
only at TCP level because it does not have HTTP profile mechanism.
Got it. Yeah.
And no layer 7 features can be used without HTTP profile because if F5 cannot open the packet, how it can detect it?
Okay, so can you just tell me some use cases where we will use this SSL pass through? Because in this we are just putting some extra load on the servers, because that's and servers also needs to decrypt the traffic. So so the thing is they will basically that need some CPU, and we also need some kind of SSL decryption functionality on the end server.
So generally, yeah, that's very good question. So generally, this is used only when we just want to use, you just do not want to use HTTP profile, you don't want any layer 7 features, but your customer want just to encrypt and decrypt on server. In that case, we can use that. I agree that there will be load on server, but sometimes they just want F5 to be used as a layer 4 feature. They don't want to use it as a HTTP layer, but they want traffic to be encrypted. So that's the use case. I agree
Okay.
that's the disadvantage, but that's only the term which has been introduced, which will have a disadvantage that we cannot use any HTTP profile and we cannot use any malware detection. But your use case, we can use it like if you don't want to use HTTP profile, but still I want my traffic to be sent end to end encryption. That's the use case.
Okay, got you. Yeah.
Okay, so guys, this was the question. So next question, please.
So can you just explain me what is difference between TCP and HTTP health monitor?
Okay, thank you, sir, for asking this question. So, see, guys, first you need to understand why monitor is required. So, both the terms comes under your monitors. So, let's discuss first about why monitor. People have questions like why health monitor is required. So, in this case, guys, question was difference between your TCP versus HTTP. So, guys, in TCP health monitor, what we do is we go to the pool. Let's say we have your client coming to your F5, and then we have pool. So, we can apply health monitor either on pool or your pool member or your node. So, question is what it checks. So, generally, guys, health monitor is a phenomena which will help F5 to detect whether server is listening on that port or not. If server is not listening, so F5 has a mechanism, right? Because if there is no health monitor, let's say I have F5, I have server 1, I have server 2, and I have server 3. Let's say if server 3 goes down and your traffic comes from client here, and we have round robin. So in this case, guys, F5 will first send traffic to S1, then to S2, and then to S3. And in this case, health monitor is not applied. So it means F5 has a wastage. It does not have any mechanism to detect whether server 3 is up or not. Still, it will send traffic to S3. It will receive traffic, it will go here, here. It will think that S3 is also up. But we know that S3 is not up. So that's the advantage of health monitor.
Okay, so you have explained the health monitor, right? But I'm looking for what is TCP health monitor and what is HTTP health monitor.
Yeah, so
How it
now,
will do that monitoring? What are the content it will use for doing it? What are the timers and all?
yeah. So guys, in TCP health monitor, we have F5 and we have server 1, server 2. I'm coming into that. I'm drawing the live picture so that it will help you to understand. So let's say in TCP, we have two servers IP. One is 10.2.2.50 on port 80. Another one is 10.2.2.50 on port 80, which one is 51. So F5 in TCP Health Monitor will check whether this server is listening on port 80 or not. If this server is listening on port 80, F5 will mark this server up, this server up.
So
And
actually, how F5 will check what kind of payload it will send
so
toward
it
that
will,
server?
in this case, it will have interval versus timeout. So there are two mechanisms. Let me show you practically. So when we go into F5, so let me go to F5. In this case, what happens generally is when you go to local traffic monitors tab, so there is a mechanism which is called TCP. Let me show you how it checks. So can you see this? We have interval and timeout settings. So in this case, there is a default mechanism. When you apply TCP health monitor, it will keep sending after 5 seconds. Timeout is 16 seconds. So here F5 will keep sending props each 5 second. First 5 second, it will say it will check using telnet mechanism. So the mechanism which was is used like if you want to troubleshoot why TCP health monitor is not up, so it will do you can do telnet on port this with telnet 80. So if it's listening, then it will make it up. If it's not, then it will make it down. So
Okay, got you.
inside mechanism, it's using telnet. Like we
Okay,
have ICMP health monitor. In that case, it will send ICMP echo and ping messages. But in
okay.
TCP, it will check your services port, whether service is using telnet mechanism.
So it will use the application telnet in a backend for
Right,
that. Yes,
right.
I'm looking for that. Okay.
So next question. So you have questions regarding
Yes, it,
TCP health
yeah.
monitor versus HTTP.
Yes, yes, right.
So next question is, guys, what exactly it does in HTTP? What exactly is HTTP health monitor? So let me show you by practical example. So in HTTP health monitor, we have client, we have F5, and we have two server, which is 10.2.2.50, and one is 10.2.2.51. In that case, sir, generally it will check when I go to F5. I will show you practically. You go to health monitor and let's go to HTTP. So guys, when you go here, let me configure one new HTTP. I will tap HTTP health monitor skilled. So if I select here health monitor as HTTP, what's the mechanism? So guys, in this case, generally it will check your send and receive string. So HTTP health monitor will check your content. Let's say I say that I need to test like whether this server has this directory or not. Let's say if I check about HTTP health monitor, in this case, generally people ask about what is send string and receive string. So based on that, it will check content. So let's take an example about send string and receive string. So guys, in this case, let's say I need to check whether temp folder is present and it should receive 200. Okay, or let's say receive. So in this case, in TCP, it was checking just whether server is listening on port this or not. But in this case, it will check, it will send your HTTP request and it will check whether this directory exists on your server or not. If this
Okay.
directory exists, let's say if I want to check index.html page. So there should be some get mechanism, right?
Yeah, it's a get
To
some
check.
method of
Yeah,
HTTP
it will
to.
use get and post or any method to check, and it depends on this. If it has, if receive string it receives okay, then it will mark it up.
Okay, so you mean say like if we mention here slash index.html, so it will just look for that particular file available inside that server or not in appropriate directory, and also if it will receive a HTTP code bit 200, which means that a string is available over there and that server is up, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Agreed.
got
So
you. Yeah,
that is why it is called content check monitor.
got it. Yeah. Yeah, now can you
Okay.
move on to the another question, which is what is the difference between node and pool members?
Yeah, this is okay. So can you just repeat the question?
What is the difference between node and pools actually, pool member?
Okay. So guys, there are three terms which is required in this term. So when you create a virtual, like you have an F5. So F5 has three terms. One is VIP, one is node, one is pool member. So in this case, difference between node and pool member is generally it comes under. So node, when I talk about, let me draw up topology. Generally, I refer by topology and give the interview. So let's say I have client and I have F5 and I have server 1. So what is the node here? So node is a IP address. So it's generally called, that is, if I draw a picture, in that case your IP address, let's say 10.2.2.50. So that is called your IP address of your backend server. So that represent your node. It's just a physical IP address of your application server behind F5. That is called node. And next question was, what is pool member? So pool member generally is a combination of your IP address plus port. So if I draw picture, it's just your IP address plus port.
So here
So
we can only able to use IP address, or we can also use here FQDN.
yes, you can use FQDN based also pool members. In
Okay,
that case, your F5 should have connection with your DNS server.
okay, got you.
So node is just, if I talk about node, node is just IP address of your server.
Okay,
That's it.
fair enough on that actually.
And your pool member is combination of IP address plus port.
Okay, got you completely.
Any other thing on this?
No, actually, I'm okay with that. Now, I'll just move towards the another question. So, can you just put some lights on what is standard virtual server and what is forwarding virtual server?
Yeah. So you need to ask like, what is difference between standard virtual server
Yep, yep,
and versus what was that forwarding?
yeah, forwarding virtual server.
Okay, sure. So guys, when we talk about standard virtual server, in that case, when let me show you through picture. So when you go to the virtual server and you create your virtual server, you need to define different things. Like, can you see this type standard and forwarding? So now the question is, what is the exact difference between your standard virtual server versus forwarding? So in standard virtual server, when I do this, so standard virtual server is nothing, but it's a combination which is acting as a full proxy model. When I talk about client, then F5, then virtual server. Here it's called virtual server, here it's called backend server. So in this case, guys, if I talk about standard virtual server, so standard virtual server is a normal virtual server where F5 is acting as a full proxy. So where you can build two connection. One is client to F5 and where you can use F5 to the server. So in this case, when I talk about TCP connection, from that you will able to understand. So standard virtual server will just send client traffic to the pool, and then it will send traffic based on load balancing algo to the server. That is called standard virtual server. So in this case, it will be acting as a full proxy model. So you will assign some TCP profile. You can assign your HTTP profile so that to detect traffic.
Okay.
So in this case, there will be two sessions, three-way handshake. One is between client to F5, SYN-ACK, and acknowledge here. Once it's done, then it will choose your pool member. Then it will build three-way handshake with that.
So now I have here one more question actually. So let's suppose client has initiated one connection towards this F5. So let's suppose he is just trying to access abc.com, which is the website which is hosted on that server, right? So the thing is, when that particular user or client initiate that request, so first he will complete the three-way handshake with this particular F5, right? And
Correct.
after that, client will send HTTP get packet, right? The first
Correct.
packet, right? And then only F5 will start the TCP3 handshake with the server.
Correct. So
Or
basically, once client handshake is completed, so F5 LTM will wait for the data packet from the client before selecting a pool member. So
okay,
it will wait for HTTP get from the client. Then once F5 acknowledge that, after that only big IP will choose pool member. That
okay,
is very important.
got you, yeah.
That's an important.
Okay. Okay. Got you. Okay. Now, can you just explain what is the difference between LTM and GTM?
So before that, there is one forwarding IP. So forwarding IP virtual server, what does it mean? So in that case, it will be just acting as your router. In that case, so what is the use case? So use case for forwarding virtual server, which is asked in every interview is what is forwarding virtual server? So in this case, guys, when we have client, we have Palo Alto, firewall, we have F5, and we have server. So my customer just wants to just forward traffic. It receives traffic on Palo Alto, but F5 is coming as a bump into wire. So client does not want to use any load balancing. But we have existing F5 in our network, so we can not do anything, right? We should have some virtual server which can forward traffic. Even if customer does not want any load balancing feature, I have an F5 coming in picture, I cannot remove it. So forwarding virtual server, what will happen is it receives the traffic and it will operate based on packet to packet basis. That's
Okay.
all.
So F5 will not perform any kind of
Load
load
balancing.
balancing over there.
Right. In this case, it will just receive SYN packet. Okay. Then it will just look over the routing table or destination IP address
Okay.
and it will just forward the packet on that.
Now let's suppose in behind F5 we are not having one server. Let's say we are having two, three, four servers. Okay. So the thing is that client will hit the traffic on the F5 virtual server, F5 forwarding virtual server IP address, right? Or that client need to send direct traffic to the server IP address.
Actually, basically in this case, good question. So destination IP would be your server IP address, which I will be creating on VIP. So we
Okay.
cannot use multiple pool members here
Okay.
because
That kind
forwarding.
of scenario is beneficial to the customer if we are having any kind of SNMP server, if that server wants to fetch some information
Yeah,
from
we can do,
our
or
end
even
server,
if
right?
you're right. This this type of setup will only be used when you have F5 and you do not want to use any load balancing feature. It's just
Okay.
coming in your environment. You just need to forward it. So
Okay,
basically,
got
it
it.
will just forward the packet based on your next hop IP address specified in the client. So that's
Okay.
what it looks over.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So that is same concept which is used basically when we talk about bump in wire or virtual wire concept in Palo Alto.
Okay. It's a transparent
Right.
transparent deployment kind of
So it's
model,
just
right?
acting as a routing or
Okay.
a router, you can say. It will just see the traffic and it will forward it.
Okay. 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 Now, what is the difference between LTM and GTM?
And- Okay. So see guys, let me draw a table where we will define difference. So guys, LTM, first of all, you need to understand what is LTM. By the name, it is called local traffic manager. And your GTM is global traffic manager. So by the term, if someone asks you this question, it- by the term it means LTM is just doing load balancing. Suppose I have a data center DC1. So local means it will just load balance on one data center. So client receive traffic, it will only do load balancing based on one data center, one DC. That is why it's called local. And GTM is acting as your DNS solution. LTM is acting as a load balancer. So it is called server load balancer. But it is not acting as a DNS solution. So GTM is called global traffic manager. So if I talk about GTM, it performs name to IP resolution. First difference is that. But in this case, it will just use as a server load balancer. LTM will not perform any name to IP. Another difference, if I talk about GTM versus LTM, let's say I have US data center and I have UK data center and I have client and I have F5. So F5 is connected to US and UK. So in that case, suppose if client is sitting at US, so I want US data center request should go to USDC. So in that case, your LTM cannot do because LTM is called local. It can load, it can only load balance application on a single data center which is present locally. But I want some global load balancer. If I receive request from US, it should send to US data center. If I receive request from UK, it should send to the UK data center. So that's where which is called global. So it will load balance your request between data centers.
Okay. It's a similar kind of service which we are having into AWS like Route 53.
Correct. That
Okay.
is excellent. That is also an same feature which is called.
Okay, so if we want, we generally it's a global service, and we will have a multiple regions across the globe. We have hosted our servers, then we will use this Route 53. Okay, okay, got you. Yeah.
So this is what is the difference between your LTM versus GTM.